Thanks, Riv. A very exciting game to even up the series. I can tell you I'm happy to see it go back and forth like that. One of the first things I noticed about that game, though, was the fact that Dig went and took those late game scaling Mundo and the Triss this time, and they actually came out on top with the late game scaling.
Well, I also think a big thing, too, is that they picked a more aggressive jungler. They picked a jungler that can fight you. We also saw Dexter trying to invade at one point, and he got pushed back by the Kha'Zix very early. So Crumbs, good pick by him there. And also, they first picked the Syndra for for Shifter in the mid lane, and they gave him something that would bully Link, and he would be able to create that pressure that they wanted to put all around the map. And they lane swapped it. So everything we basically touched on that we said Dignitas should do, they basically did.
Now, to that end, we saw the lane swap come through Pobelter, and they actually managed to keep Seraph down quite a bit. We saw he was level 2 with a Zillion on his team, like 5-6 minutes into the game. It was pretty impressive. However, that it got out of their hands through the mid game. How did that happen? How did Seraph catch back up?
Seraph just pretty much sat top, farming for like 5 minutes while Mundo was trying to make plays around Dragon on bottom. And really the only thing they were able to do was get a kill out of it with what Mundo was doing on Dignitas' side. So I think it would have been better if they pulled Syndra up top and then tried to like 3-man dive Rise to keep him down even further. And then it would have been a much easier win for Dignitas, because we did see CLG, start to claw back, and then for a while they did have a lead until they, threw it.
Yeah, they look pretty strong. You mentioned that first blood by Dignitas, where they actually TP'd Mundo down at level 7 already, and CLG literally just had no response to that because of the level disadvantage from Seraph in the top lane. He just chose not to teleport. So that was a pretty big swing there in terms of evening things up for Dignitas and keeping themselves in the game with that late game scaling competition. But why though did they lose out in that mid game against CLG?
I think it was going really even in the mid game there, and then there was that sneaky Baron by CLG that caught them up and actually gave them a little bit of gold lead and temporary combat stats. And then it was just even back and forth. I really fully believe that, because they traded inhibitors mid lane, and the kills were just even. And then there were just a couple throws, like you said, by CLG that really made the difference.
All right, well, let's look at one of those throws. Let's go to the top lane, 36 minutes in, where we see CLG get over-aggressive. Pobelter, if you don't mind walking us through this replay.
So right here, CLG is around Baron. Dignitas just tried to get some vision in, and CLG is trying to engage on them and catch them out. Rise accidentally... Okay, well, we see Nunu flash, and then he just dies. And then they're just so overextended. Half the team wants to rush in, and the other half is just trying to wait it out. And so this kind of like disconnect between the team, they just end up getting caught out, and then the half of the team that was in the back now is trying to come up and salvage the team fight, and then they just die as well. So it ends up being a 4-for-0, and then Dignitas gets Baron, and then they get the inhibitor. So it's just a huge swing.
Yeah, they NASCAR'd Seraph, and he did a victory lap first. He went up and then went around, and we saw Nunu flash the wall. Dexter was trying to close that distance as quickly as possible, and then Double Lift was still lagged behind. So they kind of trickled in with Dexter first, and then they just gave the opportunity to Dignitas to focus their full attention on one person at a time, and that's exactly what that composition wants, which is Stomp.
Seraph ended up having to even flash into that fight with all that move speed, because like you said, he kind of took that detour somewhere along the way. So interestingly enough, though, you had this like hyper aggression, right? It turns on them. Now they're down, but they still want to use this chase potential. We saw them trade inhibs in the mid lane and things like that. When you have this chase-based comp, though, and now you're the ones who have to turtle in, how do you play that scenario out, Pobelter?
Well, the problem is that CLG's engage is really poor. Really, all they have is the Zillion speed up on Rise into someone, unless they catch someone out with Yasuo. But Yasuo was always split from the rest of the team because CLG had no knockups. I guess they decided to just let him split. But he wasn't really able to do much with Mundo. And so even though CLG had the superior late game team comp with 2 hyper carries in Rise and Yasuo with the Zillion backup, because Yasuo was always split off with Mundo, the 4v4 was actually quite even.
And I want to talk about something a little bit more micro. We're going to switch gears because during the game we were talking from a mid laner's perspective. Why would you take Ignite on Yasuo? So Pobelter, I know you had some thoughts on what summoner spells are best on Yasuo, if you don't mind touching on that.
Recently, a lot of mid laners, including me, have been favoring taking Exhaust in most matchups. I think it's especially good versus Syndra, someone with a big burst that can be exhausted, because on Yasuo, if you can exhaust that burst and live just a few extra seconds, that damage output that you get from those extra survival time is a lot more to just trump the Ignite damage.
Yeah, they also had no exhaust for Tristana in the late game, which is another thing you have to think about.
Well, so yeah, it seemed like they took both Ignite on Aphromoo and on Link as an attempt to keep the Mundo down, right? It gave them the option to maybe focus him early in a team fight with the Lucian burst along with the Yasuo burst, but we didn't even see that come to fruition because, as you mentioned, Pobelter, Yasuo was off split pushing against him, but it never really, they didn't achieve anything. We saw multiple times Dig ended up just out-rotating them to the mid lane, and we saw that amazing, like the teleport in, and they just kind of out-rotated the split push that CLG was trying to set up.
Yeah, but I do think that CLG and Dignitas both did a really good job of trading objectives with each other. Like, they were immediately punished in the mid lane when Doublelift got the speed ups and the piercing light across the minions to pick up crumbs, and then they got a turret and an inhibitor for themselves. But that was happening all game. You get bot turret, we'll go get your top tier 2. And they kept doing that back and forth. So these teams were on very even footing for a lot of the game. And then it was just the late game scaling and a couple misplays that cost CLG.
Well, let's look at one other fight. We're going to jump about 41 minutes into the game. It's the second to last team fight, but kind of the big one that Dignitas uses to break open the entire base. Zyrene, I'm going to let you take this one.
All right, so a big thing here is Doublelift. He has a big CS advantage over QtPie, but it's late enough in the game that Tristana is very relevant and actually more powerful than Lucian here. So they decide to try and spike her down. We'll start rolling the clip out here and watch Link's focus onto QtPie and Doublelift's focus too. They tunnel in on him, and they start chunking him down. He gets very, very low. He gets out, face the mountain. Link comes in, he tries to dive in, flashes, doesn't get it, but he still has Ignite up. That's the big thing there is they didn't end up killing QtPie, and the Ignite was up. They overextend, they chase out, and then they just get turned around on at this point. And it just trickles in on top of them. The super minions are there, and they're able to clean up. But I think the big part of this fight was that they overextended and didn't know that CLG, they had to back off after they didn't kill QtPie. If they had killed QtPie, they could have continued to just go through them because Thresh was also very low, but that having that backline threat that you can no longer reach because you don't have your flashes available is not going to work out.
Yeah, definitely an unfortunate non-use there of the Ignite because that could have turned the entire fight. One final question back to you, Pobelter, as a player. We've seen both teams now. Dignitas has gone for that late-game scaling comp twice in a row. Worked once, didn't work the first time, worked the second time. CLG, bully lanes both times, barring the rise. Bully lanes both times, worked the first time, didn't work the second time. So do these teams just kind of stick to their guns and flip a coin now every match? Or is it time to make some adjustments and really maybe throw a curveball at somebody?
I don't think we'll be seeing really a big strategy change from either team until the next game. So after one team has a one-game lead, I think that actually Dignitas had the worst scaling team comp into the late game. It's just that CLG played it incorrectly. So I do think there was a difference between the first and second game.
All right. Well, we're going to have to take a quick break while we get vision for our third game in this exciting showdown between CLG and Dignitas. We'll be right back after this.
Is just having a field day, dashing in and out of anybody who can without the passive on him just yet. It's going to be the Ignite.
We can fight. We can fight.
Protect over.
Right now. Hey, get double.
Yeah, double. What do you have?
I'm sorry. Double.
Are we going in the game?
Yeah.
Double.
There we go.
He's doing good damage. Syndra taking down Aphromoo. Rather, that was Shifter, and they are just focusing down on the DPS.